Welcome to another episode of Learn with Lo. We are in episode 2, if you've been following along, of what I'm calling your body burden series. Last week we really introduced this term called toxic load. We answered some of those questions. If you have been around the functional medicine, alternative medicine, or even like wellness social media for any amount of time, you've probably heard the term toxins. Toxicity, toxic load, detoxification, right? And a lot of times these kind of terms do get a lot of attention. They're kind of very clickbait, right? They're attention grabbing, but they're also very relevant as well too. I just think that our understanding and our definition of what is toxic load, what is the concern, the legitimate concern about toxicity, and also helping debunk some of those individuals who maybe take one stance of saying like, oh, toxins aren't real, toxins aren't important. If you have a liver and you have a kidney and you have kidneys, you're detoxing, right? All the way to the other side of the wellness social media that almost creates a fear around toxins and makes it to where it feels almost like seemingly impossible and very overwhelming to avoid toxins in our standard world. And while many of these concerns are very true and very valid, what I really wanted to express to you guys last week in introducing this series of what is toxic load to me and at the Lowdown and with holistic medicine methods, this whole understanding of what is toxic load is not about creating fear. It's not about creating overwhelm. It's about creating a resilient body that is capable of being exposed to the toxins of the modern world and not having an accumulation of those toxins that then turns into health conditions. So how toxins show up, and this is what we talked about last week. And so if you're somebody that has been told that you have estrogen dominant symptoms or estrogen dominant hormone patterns, which are congruent with things like heavy cycles, fibroids, fibrocystic breasts, dense breast tissue, endometriosis. Those types of patterns usually are always met with some sort of detoxification deficiency. That's why those patterns are showing up. We have to detox estrogen. That is a thing. Also, if you have been told you have thyroid dysfunction, you have chronic gut issues, you have been diagnosed with any one of the hundreds of different autoimmune patterns out there, even things like certain types of cancers are also associated with detoxification concerns. And so I just think last week, if you missed last week's episode, definitely go back and listen to it, because this is not about creating fear. And this is also not just like blaming our genetics. There's so many individuals where they're like, oh yeah, well, like that cancer runs in my family. I'm like, then chances are some of these detoxification deficiencies is what actually runs in your family, right? And there's just not enough empowering conversations being had about that, because it makes it seem like, again, very fearful, very vulnerable. And in reality, we have so much that we really can take into our own hands from a health perspective to make sure that we are living in this world that, yes, is it inevitable that you're going to be exposed to plastics, pesticides, endocrine disrupting chemicals, different mold and seasonal pollens and allergies? Yes, you are going to be exposed to those things, like no doubt. But we have innate capacities to handle these things. It's just when our body is already very undernourished, overstressed, we have ongoing unregulated and unanswered inflammation patterns. Those are the individuals where they don't have a resilient body. And so they are the ones that feel like this whole like toxicity concern is either like it's genetic, it's just something that everybody in my family has dealt with, or it feels like something that's really stressful and overwhelming. And I don't want either of those. So know that, like I said, this is not about fear, and know the environment is not like trying to destroy you, okay? What we are doing, though, is we are understanding how your body's designed to handle this inevitable amount of exposures in modern life and what keeps your system running at full capacity. And so that's what I really want to dive into today is how do we do that? How do we start this conversation of building a resilient body in a like modern toxic toxic world that you're not going to be able to create a bubble boy situation and seemingly avoid everything, because there is a fine line then where it's becoming like more stress, becoming more overwhelm, and that's not healthy either. Okay, that's not healthy for our physical, mental, and emotional body. So it's almost always about your capacity and about the resources of the systems that are doing some of this detoxification work. And that's what today is all about. I call today's discussion Developing Your Detox Dream Team. We're going to talk about the main systems in our body and that are responsible for controlling our body's detoxification potential and helping optimize our detoxification capacity, and exactly some of the biggest areas that I see as common bottlenecks for people. Some of the things that I work on with individuals exactly in my clinic, I help them identify some of these parking brakes and some of these bottlenecks, and then I help them release some of these bottlenecks as well too, so that they're not just like another one in their genetic family tree that struggles with some of the same things that they've seen. Instead, they can kind of like break that a little bit and also educate their future generations on how to also feel empowered around optimizing their body's detoxification resilience and detoxification capacity. So there's really 4 major systems of this detox dream team. But before I get into that, I just want to set this frame that we're operating in, because I truly do think that this matters as we're talking about some of the things that can provide a little bit more fear and overwhelm in individuals. There is a lot in our environment that we cannot control. We can't necessarily directly control the air quality outside. We can't always control the exact soil that our food is growing in, or the water infrastructure in our city, or the history of the building that we're working in and breathing in. And are we spending our energy trying to control all of those things? That is just a stress and cortisol spiral, and it doesn't necessarily make us healthier. It actually impairs the very detoxification systems that we are trying to support. Like, cortisol is the antithesis to detoxification. So the holistic medicine reframe that I just want to offer for you guys today is, we are not trying to build a perfect environment. We are not trying to create a bubble boy situation here. We are building a resilient body. That is what I think is in our control, and that is in our power. And it's a body that is so well resourced. It is so well nourished. It is running so efficiently that it handles all of these exposures, whether that's excess hormones, environmental exposures, endogenous toxins that we create because of gut dysbiosis, right? It clears it, it eliminates it, and it moves on without accumulating a burden. And that's like interfering with our health. So that's the goal, right? So what we can control are things like our nutrient status. Do we have the necessary cofactors required for detoxification pathways? Because, spoiler alert, it's a nutrient dense process to detox. So there's so many people out there that are walking around just honestly, quite frankly, malnourished, and no wonder they're not a great detoxer. Or what about your gut health? This is your primary elimination pathway at work. What about your drainage pathways, inclusive of things like bile flow? Are things actually moving out of your body from a fat soluble state to a water soluble state and then out through our exit pathways? What about things like mitochondria, which we'll talk about today, those little powerhouses of the cell that are supplying all of the necessary energy for detoxification? Do our mitochondria actually have the resources and the energy to run detoxification processes? What about overall stress load? Like I said, our nervous system and cortisol responses, are we working with detox or are we working against it? So every single one of those things, the cool part is we can create a lot of empowerment around those, because those things are within a lot of our control. And I feel like that's where we should be putting our energy. And with that, then we can really understand, okay, cool. There's so much about detoxification that is not just chalked up to genetics. It's not just chalked up to like an internally toxic environment that I have no control over. This is about empowering ourselves to realize that you can create a very detox resilient body, and you can also change the trajectory of some of the genetic detoxification deficiencies that have plagued other generations of your family, which I think is just like so cool. And we live in a world of modern medicine where this information is available to us, and it's also like not behind some like secret pharmaceutical strategy, right? It's like we can do this with like the modern tools that we have available to us. So let's talk about our detox dream team. I want to present 4 main players, the MVPs of your detoxification dream team. The first player is probably one that you've heard of before, but probably don't have as much respect around that it probably deserves, and that is the liver. The liver is the quarterback of the detox dream team here, okay? Everything is going to route through the liver. And so what is the liver's job? The liver's job is to get out fat-soluble compounds. A lot of different toxins are stored in a fat-soluble state, including hormone metabolites. So when our body creates steroid hormones like estrogen and testosterone, we want to use it and lose it. We don't want those things to build up in the system. We also hear about environmental toxins that are fat soluble, medications, metabolic waste. A lot of these things are fat soluble nutrients that the body puts in a fat soluble state and stores them, which is why you hear about people getting fatty liver disease. That is a toxicity issue. Okay. And this is where the liver's job is to run these fat soluble toxins through a 3-phase process. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. If there's any bottlenecks or any issues in any one of those phases, you're going to have issues eliminating fat soluble toxins safely from the system. That shows up as hormonal issues, shows up as thyroid issues, shows up as autoimmune patterns, shows up as chronic gut issues, shows up as skin issues, right? Like these are like how the body's actually manifesting some of these detoxification bottlenecks. So phase 1 in the liver is what we call activation phase. So this involves what are called cytochrome P450 enzymes, and these are where we actually take that compound and for just a split second, we make it more reactive. So if you've ever heard the term like reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress, this is where it comes from. The liver is activating those phase 1 toxins, and just for a split second, it's making them more reactive. And then it passes it to phase 2. Phase 2's job is conjugation. It takes that like very reactive intermediate and it makes it water soluble. So that way we can pass it out through the bile and then pee, poop, or sweat it out, mostly poop it out through phase 2 elimination patterns. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, there's lots of potentials for bottlenecks here, okay? You can even think about things like constipation. How many people are walking around chronically constipated? That is a detoxification issue. That is a phase 3 elimination issue. Or what about someone who doesn't have a gallbladder? That's a telltale sign that they were having issues with detoxification a long time ago because the gallbladder is part of the liver. So its job is to store bile. So a lot of times individuals who have had their gallbladder removed or have had gallbladder issues before, that should clue you off that they do not have optimal detoxification capacity. Now, does yanking out the gallbladder fix that? No, it actually makes it worse. Welcome to modern medicine. But it's, like I said, one of those situations where it had to be done because it had gotten so bad that nobody had caught this issue prior. So when we think about the liver, I could talk about the liver all day long, but I'm not going to because I will be here for hours. But just suffice it to say the liver is the quarterback of this detoxification dream team here. It has a 3-phase process. There are many opportunities for potential bottlenecks in that process due to nutrient deficiencies, genetic detoxification deficiencies, excessive amounts of fat-soluble nutrients building up in the system. So when we think about this, like this is all about bile. We have to think about how we are flowing bile through the system, and that is what I work on with individuals. Identifying where your bottlenecks are at, phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3, and opening those bottlenecks appropriately. So if the liver is the quarterback, then the next player on the team is going to be the kidneys. Okay, the kidneys work in conjunction with the liver. The liver's job is to excrete fat-soluble compounds. The kidney's job is to eliminate water-soluble compounds. So they filter approximately 200 liters of our blood every single day, pulling out the water-soluble toxins out of circulation. It also includes what the liver made water soluble Remember, the liver's job is to take it from a fat soluble state to a water soluble state, and then you either poop it out, pee it out, or sweat it out. A lot of that is also filtered through the kidneys because the liver was able to make it water soluble for the kidneys. So it really concentrates the urine and then eliminates it from the body as another excretion pathway. So you have to think about the kidney can't handle fat soluble compounds. It has to be water soluble first. So the liver has to be able to do its job for the kidneys to be able to do its job. The kidneys can be overwhelmed very easily if the toxin metabolites are arriving faster than the body can clear them out, which happens when there's significant nutrient deficiencies and significant dehydration. Okay. So if you're someone that's like running on coffee and caffeine and energy drinks throughout the day, you are so severely dehydrated that your kidneys can be overstimulated by the amount of water soluble toxins that are arriving, and they cannot clear them out at an acceptable rate. I would say also specifically hard on the kidneys is when there are heavy metal concerns. Lead, cadmium, some of those types of things accumulate very quickly in the kidney tissue. So when we think about the kidneys, obviously we're thinking about minerals, and mineral deficiencies. We're thinking about hydration status as well too. Those are biggies when it comes to the kidneys. So we got the quarterback. I almost would say the kidneys would be like the receivers, because the quarterback is like throwing the kidneys the water soluble versions of the toxins to like, is the kidneys going to catch them, and can the kidneys like take them in for a touchdown, right? You'll have to pardon my like poor sports analogies here, but I think it tracks, right? So the liver's the quarterback, the kidneys are receiving some of these toxins, and the kidneys have to be able to clear them out fully. Now, the last two players here are kind of outside of like direct detoxification, but they are going to be the bottlenecks that will stall detoxification very, very quickly. Number one is the immune system. Okay, so player one, the liver. Player two, the kidneys. Player three is your immune system. The immune system's always watching, right? Maybe this is like the head coach on the sideline, or like the offensive coordinator on the sideline, constantly watching, constantly modulating what needs to happen. They're surveying for foreign compounds, surveying for toxins. They're tagging things and flagging things. I mean, maybe they're also the referee. Do you see where I'm going with the sports analogy? I'm really working of like, ooh, what would the immune system be? They actually might be, like I said, a little bit more of the referee on the field as well too. But the problem with this toxin burden situation is it always keeps the immune system in a chronic low state of activation. And this is what I see all the time in clinic. It's like someone who's like actively fighting off a low-grade infection every day. Incredibly fatiguing. So inflammatory, right? And very metabolically expensive. Like this is burning through a lot of nutrients to do this. And so what creates some of that immune dysregulation is like hyperreactivity states like chronic allergies, sensitivities, autoimmunity, or someone who's like not responsive enough and they constantly are getting sick. They have poor recovery. They have latent viral reactivation patterns like EBV. Mold can absolutely be part of this picture. Mold and mycotoxins are a big part of that immune system reactivation. And I don't think it's talked about enough, the role that the immune system plays in detoxification. And that is a major player in this game as well, too. And then the fourth player of our detoxification dream team, you knew I was going to talk about them eventually. This is the mitochondria, okay? The mitochondria, they are the energy source. They are the powerhouses of the cell. They're the Gatorade for the team, right? It's like, let's go. Probably the most overlooked picture in detoxification as well too, because you need so much power to operate optimal detoxification capacity. Like this is an energy expensive process. It's a nutrient taxing process. So when you think about like toxins, infections, traumas, like this is deliberately down regulating the energy system to put the body then into like defense mode. Right? And so when you see this, you have to think about like if there's this like perfect storm, right? The combination that's like treatment resistant to detoxification is nutrient depleted, big one, immune system activation, whether that's like chronic exposure to things like molds, heavy metals, and on top of that, also has a tremendous amount of gut dysbiosis, leaky gut, which is keeping the immune system overactivated. That is just going to be a detoxification fatigue picture that like no amount of energy supplements, adrenal adaptogens, honestly, even sleep, like, because the problem here is upstream. And it is where we have to like really start to understand like what is burdening the mitochondria to begin with, what is really depleting their overall battery life. Right? Because otherwise you're just going to see everybody on the field is just going to start to right? They're going to start to crash. They're going to start to get injured. You're not going to have the reserves to pick up the slack there. So when you think of this detoxification dream team, yes, we're talking about the liver. There's a lot of physiological bottlenecks that I help people identify here. Yes, the liver is going to pass those fat soluble to water soluble toxins to the kidneys, and the kidneys have to be able to catch them and excrete them. But this burden of toxicity is putting a tremendous amount of pressure and burden on the immune system, which is very energy expensive to be able to fight off like a low-grade infection every day. And the mitochondria are the batteries that have to try to hold this whole system together, right? So yes, we hear about things like heavy metals, mold, plastic, endocrine disrupting chemicals, things in our water and our air and our soil and fragrances and fabrics, right? It's like, yeah, it's everywhere. But can you build a resilient body that is well equipped to operate these detoxification dream team at full capacity? Then it's really no issue, right? And the integration of all of these working together is really where it happens in a beautiful system. Like they truly are a team. Your livers, like you have plural, liver cannot complete detoxification if the kidneys aren't clearing the output. And the kidneys can't clear the load if the liver hasn't put it in a water-soluble state first. And the immune system is out there, they're surveilling all of it and modulating the response, whereas the mitochondria, they are the power of every single step of that equation, which means if there is mitochondrial dysfunction, this isn't just a fatigue problem, this is a whole body detoxification issue. And that's why, to me, when I hear the term like toxin load or toxin burden, it creates a pretty widespread picture in somebody. And it's not just hitting one system, it's kind of impairing the entire team, and rebuilding that entire team takes everybody, right? We kind of need all the players in the right order with the right resources in place. And so this isn't like binders and saunas. Like, this is building capacity, people. This is building capacity of a system that was designed to do this work. But we're out there thinking that detox means I'm like fasting and juice cleanses. And I'm like, no, that's kind of the opposite, because this is a very energy expensive process. So if your definition of detoxification hasn't really included supporting your body being the most resilient system that it can, and hasn't been supporting like a detox dream team, like, it's time to start thinking about that now. And a great way to kind of identify where some of these bottlenecks might be for you is start with blood work. Start with someone like myself that knows how to identify some of these things in blood work. And that's exactly what my functional wellness consult is designed to do. We start with comprehensive blood work. We get to talk about some of these widespread detoxification deficiencies and start to really open up where those parking brakes might be for you. So hopefully you're enjoying this detox series, because there's more coming next week.